Camera even.
3, 2, 1, roll the footage. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Simon Severino, your host, and today my guest helps B2B marketing teams to scale. He's a mentor for startups at MIT, author of Bullseye Marketing, advisor to B2B teams. He's an expert in B2B marketing. We will go deep into the dark market that we don't even know of, what the key is to optimal long-term business growth, and the central role of creativity in your long-term growth. Welcome, everybody, Louis Gudema.
Hello, Simon. Nice to be here.
Tell us about your book. How did writing a book change you?
It changed the work that I was doing. They say that a book is the modern business card, and so the book opened up a lot of doors, not just to appearing on podcasts like yours. This is the second edition is coming out now, and so people should be careful if they do want to buy the book that they aren't getting the first edition, that they are getting the second edition. The second edition is just about B2B, and it not only brought me a wider audience through podcasts like yours and many others, but I had companies who bought hundreds of copies, distributed to their channel partners, had me speak at their global conferences. More companies that hired me to be a fractional CMO, which is my main work, and even a new side hustle as a ghostwriter of business and marketing books. So a lot of changes in a lot of different ways. There's a
And
lot
how
of,
do you balance all these different roles? How do you make them happen in one day?
they don't always collide at the same time, but Simon, I'm sure you have many balls up in the air as well. And I try to carve out time, dedicated to each one when I'm working on it. So I've got a few hours for one, a few hours for the next, and not try to multitask and work on being a fractional CMO while I'm writing a book, or in the same session. Try to separate those out and have some dedicated mind space on each one.
One of your topics is that long-term growth has creativity at its center. Why creativity? What is creativity in business?
So yeah, the thing that many people get wrong, and you mentioned the dark market, is that they focus too much on these short-term lead generation programs, which are valuable, and they forget about growing their long-term brand and what's called mental availability. And that's a key term that many marketers don't know. And mental availability is that people aren't just aware of you, it goes beyond awareness, but that they will think of you when they want to buy your product or service, that you are top of mind. And this is where that whole dark market comes into play. And I wish I had thought of that term while I was writing the book, and I'll have to put it into, you know, edition 2.A or something.
Your next book,
Um,
Dark Market.
Seriously, man. So only like 5% of your market wants to buy from you today, or buy from anyone. They either don't want that service or product, or they're happy with the vendor they already have. It's only a very small part of the market that's interested. And so what you need to do is build up that mental availability with the rest of the market, and that's through brand marketing. And brand marketing relies on creativity. It relies on emotional connection with the audience. Unlike lead gen marketing, which is all about logic. It's all about, 10% off, download our white paper, sign up for our webinar. That's all logical stuff. You either, respond to that ad or you forget it, 10 seconds later. But you could, Simon, there's probably TV commercials you saw as a kid that you still remember.
Definitely.
Yeah. Everybody I say that to, everybody's like, oh yeah, definitely. I remember this ad and I remember that commercial and blah, blah, blah. That's because of creativity. That's because they had emotional connections. You don't remember any lead gen ad that you saw as a kid. You don't remember any lead gen ad from a day ago, from, an hour ago. And so that's why creativity is so important when you're building your brand, building that mental availability, and having a sustained mental presence with your audience so that when they move into that 5% who wants to buy now, that you're top of mind. Because half or more of the business opportunities in your industry do not talk to multiple vendors. They do not do a bake-off between 4 or 5 firms and respond to search ads and other intent-based marketing to find out what vendors they should talk about. They get to the point, half of the time, potential customers get to the point where they want to buy what you want and they know who they want to talk to. And let me give you one example of this. So I had a marketing agency for a dozen years. And after I sold it, I was VP of business development for a mid-sized marketing agency that sold to big companies and such. And the very first call I got, the guy said, I've been following you for the last 3 years. I've seen your CEO speak. I read your blog. I really like your approach. We're finally ready to do something. That was all marketing. That deal closed very fast. That wasn't because I was a brilliant salesperson. That's because we had mental availability. We were top of mind. They weren't talking to other companies, to other agencies, and we closed the deal and went to work. That's what you need to build up. And in the long term, that will be an even greater driver of business growth than short term lead gen marketing will be.
Totally agree. That's the same thing that we hear is, Simon, it's months that I'm watching your videos, reading your emails. I'm ready. When can we start? And I go, oh, wait a moment. I don't know you. But they go, well, but I know exactly what's happening next. You told me
Right.
like 7 times. And
Yeah, this
and
podcast is a perfect example of it, I'm sure.
and I remember TV ads from my childhood. One of them is Mastro Lindo. So there is the dirt monster. Oh, the dirt monster. And then comes Mastro Lindo, and everything is clean and shiny. And he has a clean and shiny bald head. It's perfect. It's emotionally
Yeah.
perfect. And that's my example. When people ask me, like, how should my website be? I go like Mastro Lindo. There is a problem. There is an enemy and there is a hero who wants to overcome that problem, and you are the guide and you are Master Lindo. You have a plan, you come with a plan, and this is the call to action. And they go, oh, it's that simple? And I say, well, and that's really simple. It's in the end, it's simple. If you can get there, it will be a process to get there with this simplicity and this clarity. But in the end, if you can have such a message and nemesis, people forget about the nemesis, right? It's for some people it's hard to remember that it can be inside of you, it can be outside of you, but there is always an obstacle. So it's
Yeah.
powerful when we talk about the obstacle. What is your experience?
Well, your commercial sounds like what in the United States was Mr. Clean.
Yeah.
And Mr. Clean was this very fit guy who was, like a cleaning guy, but he was bald also, like your guy. And he would go around cleaning things, and he was helping housewives and such. And there's a lot of so the biggest multiplier of marketing is market size, is market share. Like the companies that have the biggest market share, their marketing has more impact. That's one of the advantages of brand. But by far, the second biggest multiplier of marketing is creativity.
Mm.
And, because it stays with you for a long time. And but it's not easy to do. Some people say you need different teams doing your creative brand marketing than your lead gen marketing because they're so different in how they're done and how you think of them and execute them. But it's tremendously important, and too many companies overlook it. Too many agencies overlook it.
I totally agree. I sometimes read like very, very old books about marketing, like the Ogilvies, everything that Ogilvy ever wrote. And I see it and I say, this is so current. This is so actual. If people just would think about the basics.
Oh, totally. So I often, when I'm giving a talk, I'll often start with my first slide is a book called Scientific Advertising. And it's sold millions of copies. You still see it gets, like really high reviews. It gets recommended by top marketers all the time. It came out 100 years ago because people don't change. And the things that appeal to people don't change. The channels change. Now it's Chat GPT, and before that, and you have all sorts of things. You have marketing technology and new channels all the time. But the way you have to the fundamental mission of marketing is understanding your customer and communicating them in a way that motivates them. And that never changes.
What about short term versus long term? How do you balance? Well, if I put in this urgency tactic, I know I can squeeze out 6% more, but it might cost me long term. What is your approach there?
Well, I think you have to have different campaigns. I mean, if you have short-term and long-term campaign messages in the same ad, in the same marketing, you'll tend to dilute both. And it may be effective, but it wouldn't be as effective if you had dedicated lead gen campaigns and dedicated brand campaigns. And for B2B, I mean, roughly you want to do 50-50 of each. You want to do about half brand, half lead gen. And if you're just starting off marketing, like if you're a consultant working with a company, since brand marketing can take a year or two to really hit peak effectiveness, it's hard to get a new client to go along with that. And that's where my bullseye approach comes in. So in bullseye marketing, you start with, in the center of the bullseye, these very inexpensive, fast acting programs, what I call taking advantage of your marketing assets. Things like email marketing, which costs almost nothing, selling more to current customers, having better collaboration between sales and marketing, working on conversion rate optimization. Because if you don't have that nailed down, you're just trying to fill a bucket that's full of holes. So you do these things first, set that foundation, start to establish some credibility, then do that intent-based marketing, do the search ads, and establish more credibility, generate more business.
Let me
And then
double click before we go to the second stage. Let me double click in the bullseye. What if I have just 800 people on my list? How do I grow my list?
Well, first of all, you wouldn't believe how many times I start working with a company and I say, how many people are on your list? And they may say 10,000 or 20,000 or more. And I'll say, how often do you email them? And they say, oh, like around the holidays. They don't use their list at all. So the first thing is to use your list regularly, like, be sending stuff out at least once a week, even if it's 800 people. And maybe for your business, that's a very good list. But you can grow lists with offers. And, Simon, this is an issue that I talk about in the book, this question of gating content. Should you gate your content and say, you can only see this if you give me your email address or not? And, sometimes you'll do a basic version for free and have, the in-depth version that's gated, or there's other things. But usually, the way you have to grow the list is through a lot of work and a lot of offers that are valuable that people are willing to give you your email address for.
Absolutely. And I want to know everything about the dark market and how we can tap into it after one word from our sponsor. What if your business would run well even when you are on vacation? Discover how 1,600 business owners have regained their freedom using the Strategy Sprints blueprints. How they enjoy living their dream and watching their business scale. Get the exact checklists they use to go from stressed to fulfilled using the Strategy Sprints method. Order your copy of Strategy Sprints 12 Ways to Accelerate Growth for an Agile Business on Amazon today. And if you love it, leave us a review. For more information, head over to strategysprints.com. So we start in the bullseye and then we move to the next, which is intent-based and ads. What's next?
Right. So the center of the bullseye is those quick, inexpensive things taking advantage of your marketing assets. The second ring is the using intent-based marketing, like search ads. And then the outer ring is where you're building up your brand and your mental availability. And that's where you're addressing the dark market. That's where you're saying, I know that in the future, the other 95% of the market will be looking to buy. It may be 3 months from now, 6 months, a year, 3 years, but they will. And I want to be top of mind when they do. And that will produce a ton of new business. And so what you do is that brand marketing. And it can be, the basic is you want to have a consistent share of voice. You want your podcast to be out there. You want to have content. You want to have advertising. I don't think these companies that do advertising, that do brand advertising, are idiots. Some of these companies like Salesforce, they spend billions of dollars a year on brand advertising. They're not dumb. They know what they're doing. They have the metrics to prove it. But LinkedIn itself says that 75% of the ads on LinkedIn are ineffective. And the reason they're ineffective is because they're just crappy product ads that neither generate leads nor build an emotional connection. So you have to realize what you're doing with your ad and which of those are you trying to accomplish, and how do you go about doing that? And spend half of your marketing budget on the brand aware and mental availability, so that you do have that long-term result. Even if you're a startup, in my book, I quote Jaleh Rezai, and she now is the CEO of Mutiny, an AI marketing startup, but she was the CMO of Gusto. If you're familiar with Gusto, it's a very large online payment firm. Lots of companies use it. She was the CMO when they grew from 500 customers to 50,000 customers. So she led a very successful marketing program. And she says that that her brand ads never generated leads. She said they performed terribly. But whenever she stopped running them, 6 months later, her lead gen ads went in the tank and started performing much worse. And her customer acquisition costs started to go up. And so she had to spend at least 20% of her startup marketing budget on brand as a minimum to keep the lead gen ads performing as well as possible. So they all work together, but you got to do them both.
That's interesting. So if we are measuring the brand campaigns, we actually have to measure them always together with the lead gen campaigns. Otherwise, we're measuring the wrong number.
Yeah, I mean, brand campaigns are hard to measure. They're especially hard to measure for small companies. If you're Salesforce, you have, the scale that you can measure it. But you can see it in, for example, organic search traffic to your site. Because for most companies, the most popular search term is their name. And so if your brand is getting stronger, you're going to get more organic search to your site. You're going to get more backlinks. Your salespeople will tell you. I had the head of sales at a company I was working at. After 3 months, he said, God, all these people are telling us, they're hearing about us, that, they see this stuff that we're doing. They got to know more about what's going on here. You know, there's a lot of, it's not always going to be hard numbers. Sometimes it'll be anecdotal. Um, but if you do it well and you do it consistently, and that's always so important for all marketing, is that consistent day to day, you have the results. I like to use this analogy, Simon. So it's well known that if you exercise 30 minutes a day, and you look like a person who does, that if you exercise 30 minutes a day, at least 5 days a week, you will be healthier. People who do that tend to live longer, they're healthier, they don't, have illnesses as much, they don't get COVID as much, they have lighter cases if they do. It's just a great thing for your health. That's like brand marketing. You can't say, oh, I ran last Tuesday and that's what made me healthy. It's doing it week after week, month after month, year after year. The lead gen marketing is like getting a stent if you have a heart attack, or getting radiation therapy if you have cancer, or getting your COVID shot, vaccine. Those are short term. They may even save your life, but they don't produce long term health and wellness. You need both. You need the short term, things when you need those, and you need to be doing the exercise and the brand building all the time for those.
I like the analogy. And many entrepreneurs in our community, they don't see the lead gen part working. So they give up usually after 3-4 months. They give up even trying because they've spent now $20,000. They're a small business and they don't see it working now. And they would put in 3 to 6 months more in experimentation and optimization and getting the cost of acquisition down. And they go, is this even worth pursuing? How do you decide if it's time to persevere and optimize, or if actually it's not working for them?
There are times when channels don't work. And I think it's especially hard uh, if you have been relying on referrals. So referrals uh, are the highest closing channel. And so when people start to do other marketing, they start to say, well, 90% of these leads are bad. Like, why am I doing this? With referrals, like 90% of my leads are good. This doesn't seem to be very smart. Um, and the volume that's needed to actually produce results, the time you need to test messages, to test offers, to figure out what's really going to work, it can be a very hard switch for a lot of agencies and others to make. Um, when I had my agency, we found 2 or 3 channels that were especially effective for us. But teleprospecting was one of them. Events, trade shows was one of them, uh, and so forth. So it's not always going to be search ads. Um, it may be webinars. It may be ads in trade association publications, and so forth. It can take a while to figure out what's going to work.
And there is a dip in each of those. There will be a dip. So what we are asked many times is, how do we see a good dip versus a bad dip? So I should persevere versus, oh, this channel is not working, let's skip it.
Well, I think that's where the multi-channel approach is so important, because if you have 5 or 6 channels going, in my experience, 1 month your great channel will be email. In another month, your great channel will be webinars. And another month, your great channel, will be search ads or whatever it may be. And you see it changing from month to month. And you can send out a couple bad emails, but the other channels will keep performing. Uh, and then the next month, you'll send out better emails and get results from those. And so, I'm a big believer in multi-channel. They reinforce each other. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And, I was seeing Ginny Dietrich, who's a terrific PR person. She was talking about this a few months ago, where she was saying, PR works when you've got some great news and big announcement, but you need other channels going when you don't have that. So, PR is going to be big 1 month for you, but you got to have, 4 to 6 channels, I think, going so that they balance out and you get good results over time.
I like that. And it's fair to say that when you're starting out, you focus on 1 or 2 where you can have the most impact on and you can be cost effective. But then as soon as you can deploy more, then you diversify, and having 4 to 6 is what keeps you running under all weather conditions.
Exactly. Yes.
And so the bull's eye, that's the blueprint. We start in the center of the blueprint, then we move out the rings. Where can people find your book?
Well, they can find it on Amazon. And so make sure you're buying the second edition, because there are used copies of the first edition still around, but the second edition, it puts money in my pocket. No, I mean, it's better. The second edition is better. And it is about B2B. So, your audience who is looking for B2B marketing, that's what the second edition is solely focused on. The ebook, you can either order or buy now, depending on when you look at this. The hardback will be available within a few days. So go to Amazon and you can find it. And if you want to see some reviews and some endorsements, go to louisgudema.com. And I've been really gratified by the response it's been getting from some really terrific leading marketers and other business people. So you can see those on louisgudema.com.
Bullseye Marketing, everybody, by Luis Gudema. Thank you, Luis, for being here. And keep rolling, keep sharing your wisdom. I hope your book helps many, many B2B marketing teams.
Thank you, Simon. It's been a pleasure.
Avoid trying to do thousands of things that doesn't work. We have 274 templates for your business success. Reach your ambitious goals with one-on-one sprint coach. We double your revenue in 90 days.
What if your business would run well even when you are on vacation? Discover how 1,600 business owners have regained their freedom using the Strategy Sprints blueprints. How they enjoy living their dream and watching their business scale. Get the exact checklists they use to go from stressed to fulfilled using the Strategy Sprints method. Order your copy of Strategy Sprints 12 Ways to Accelerate Growth for an Agile Business on Amazon today. And if you love it, leave us a review. For more information, head over to strategysprints.com.